Hi friends, welcome to Cracker's video series. In this particular video, we'll be discussing the NMAT exams, especially if you're just completely new to the exam, if you don't know what to expect. I'll be covering the exam, the pattern, the syllabus, everything over here. I'll also tell you how to use the NMAT syllabus. So if this is the first video that you're watching, this will be also an introduction of how to use the NMAT course designed by Cracker. So let's get started. Let's first understand about the exam. So firstly, before everything, let us take a stock of the dates that are important dates that you have to remember. Remember, NMAT is an exam administered by GMAT. So the GMAT proctors the exam, it administers the exam, it makes the exam, and it is pretty similar to the GMAT exam in the sense that it can be taken at test centers. It can be taken at home also in the online proctored mode. It is administered in these kind of test centers where you have to book appointments and go. So it is an entire process which is essentially held, which is kind of conducted by GMAC. Okay. So this basically over here you have to book appointments so that you either go and take it at test center, or you can book it to take it online at home, and that is very different from the exams that you have done till now, because firstly, this is a exam that you could possibly take at home, which is very different from all the exams you would have taken. So these are the two different major ways in which you can attempt the exam. Essentially, this is a computer adaptive test, which is also very different from most other exams like CAT, ZAT, etc. The test changes depending on your ability on whether you get a question right or whether you get a question wrong. I'll go on that in the next slide, the exam pattern and the syllabus, etc. in the next pattern. But essentially, this is a exam where it is kind of administered by an external agent, which is GMAC. And again, because of that, you are given a lot more flexibility here than you normally get. So basically, this is something where you can take 3 times. Basically, you can give the exam once, then you can pay for reattempting, then you can pay again for reattempting. You can take it 3 times in this particular window for taking the NMAT exam. So you can attempt 3 times. So if you're somebody who gets a lot of anxiety, is not able to do well given the stress of exam, maybe this might actually help you relieve that anxiety, knowing that you can retake the exam if you do poorly. So you are allowed 2 reattempts, 1 main attempt and 2 reattempts, with the caveat that there has to be at least 15 days between the attempts. Now the registration starts from 1st August, and you can start scheduling the exam from 1st August itself. The exam can be taken from 10th October to 19 December. So this is basically when the exam will take place. You can schedule or book an appointment from this 10th October to 19 December, but the registration and scheduling has already started, so you can start by registering and scheduling your exam from now on. And I would suggest that do it on the earlier end rather than on the later end, because if you want to retake the exam, given that there has to be 15 days between attempts, if you leave it till December, then you won't get the chance to reattempt attempts. So it would make more sense to schedule one in October and November itself, so that you have had a chance to, if in case you want to reattempt, you can then schedule the reattempt or the second reattempt in December. So you can, it costs 2,800 rupees per attempt. So once you schedule and once you book a slot, you have to pay 2,800, and if you want to reschedule, there's another, I think there's 1,200 per rescheduling or something like that, and if you want to reattempt again, it is another 2,800. So it is not as expensive as GMAT exam, though it is administered by GMAC and it has the same kind of facilities. It is not as expensive as the GMAT exam. Now again, what I would suggest, what would be the same thing to do is schedule it sometime in October or early November, so that it doesn't conflict with your main CAT exam. Also, you get a chance to retake the exam if it doesn't go well. Again, having the flexibility or option of retaking the exam would also free up some amount of anxiety and mental space in your mind. So that would be my suggestions. Schedule the exam somewhere in the October or early November dates as such. Okay, so these are your dates for scheduling and rescheduling. So basically, you can reschedule up to 16 December, because the final date to take the exam is also 19 December. So beyond that, you can't really schedule the exam as such. Again, you have the option to like retake. So retake also starts from October 11th October to 16th December. Retake rescheduling also you have to do it in that period itself. So again, given this entire idea, just remember that the exam is between 10th October to 19th December, and you have to schedule some time before that. If you have to retake it, the first schedule attempt ends in 13th October, so you have to schedule at least by 13th October. So don't leave, like don't just register and leave. You have to register and at least schedule the first attempt before 13th October. So this date is important. This date is very important. You have to remember that you have to register and schedule before. You have to register before 10th October. You have to schedule before 13th October. Okay, so remember these dates, and I would suggest register of now only, so that you do not leave it for the last moment. Schedule of something now. In case you are not able to meet that commitment, you can reschedule by paying 1200. So if possible, schedule of now, register of now for sure, schedule of now also if possible. Now let's take a look at the exam format. So as I mentioned, this is a computer adaptive test. So what exactly is a computer adaptive test? See, basically the number of questions doesn't change. So basically there are 3 sections. There are 36 questions per section. Now what happens is that these 36 questions, normally what happens in your CAT paper or ZAT paper, there are a pre-selected bunch of 36 questions. Once you start the paper, all 36 of them are loaded onto your screen. That is not the case with a computer adaptive test. You will be given 36 questions, but what those questions are not selected at the start of the test. So basically only the first question is selected. Now whether you get this question right, correct or incorrect, the second question is selected based on this answer to the first question. If you are correct, then a harder question is selected, or something which is slightly more or at the same difficulty level. If you get it incorrect, then an easier question is selected. So based on your attempt of the first question, you will be going to either harder questions or easier questions. So basically each question's input determines the next question that is selected. So the first 36 questions are not selected by default. Everyone's exam will be different. Everyone won't solve the same set of 36 questions. There will be like a pool of 10,000 questions, from which questions will be picked based on your particular attempt, your particular difficulty level. So if you see that your difficulty level is marginally increasing with time, that means you're actually doing well. But don't worry if it suddenly drops in difficulty level. What can also happen is that when you have different topics, for example, if they're testing you in arithmetic and they see, okay, this person is able to solve arithmetic questions and they are getting harder and harder in difficulty level, and suddenly they give you a question from, like, say, probability or number systems, there might be a drop in difficulty level because they haven't really tested you on that particular topic as such. So drop in difficulty level doesn't mean that you have answered incorrectly, but essentially if you answer correctly, in general the tendency is for you to get harder and harder questions. If you are solving, your questions will become easier. So that is basically a path that is chosen depending on your choices, the answers, whether you answered it correctly or incorrectly. So that is basically the computer adaptive test. You get 3 sections, 108 questions, 36 questions in each section. Another thing that you have to remember, you can't skip a question because the next question cannot be loaded until you answer this question. So there is no skipping of questions. You have to answer to proceed. And you will be 36 questions will be there. So it might happen you might not be able to answer all 36 of them, but you can't skip ahead as such. Okay. And also there is no negative marking. So all questions you might, if you answer incorrectly also, the next question will be the only problem will be that the next question will be easier. There is no other penalty otherwise. Okay, and the number of options per question is 5. So this is what you have to remember about the test. So whatever the question you get, you will get one question, a 5 option question, and if you get it correctly, you get positive marks. If you get it incorrectly, no negative marking, but based on whether you got it right or wrong, the next question is selected. Again, if you solve a lot of difficult questions, it is actually factored into the score as such. Your score that is generated is a scaled score, and it also factors in how difficult the questions were that you actually answered. So you might think, okay, I answered 20 questions correctly, but my questions were much harder than somebody who answered all 36 questions, but he got a lot of easier questions. The difficulty of the questions is also factored into the score, so don't worry about that. Okay, so now let us take a look at the individual sections. Again, because this is a computer adaptive test, you will be given an option of choosing in what order you want to take the questions. So you can choose that I want to have language skills first, then quant, then reasoning, or you can have quant and then language skills and then reasoning, or you can choose any of the orders as such for these particular tests. But essentially, you have to basically choose the order in which you will maximize your score. So if you are somebody who gets tired very quickly and in the later sections you are not able to read or concentrate on reading, I would suggest that taking the language skills one up front, because it has reading comprehensions to read. If you are somebody who can do questions, who is very good at quant and who can do the easy quant even when you are tired, I would suggest keeping it for the end as such. So these are things that I think that you should think of. Try to attempt it in different orders whenever you are taking mocks. Also try to consider the different configurations and find out the configuration that works for you as such. Now again, remember that though it has equal weightage for each of the sections, the time is not equal. The reason for that is that some of the questions would take more time to solve, some would be taking less time to solve. So the first one, which is language skills, so there will be reading comprehensions questions as well, but there will be easier vocab questions which won't take you can solve in less than 1 minute, like half a minute. So because of that, though there are 36 questions, there are only 28 minutes. In quantitative skills, because you have to solve an actual question, you will have around 52 minutes to solve the same 36 questions. And in logical reasoning, again you have some easier questions to solve. So you will have some questions which are based on like simple puzzles, like solving one particular easy puzzle or arrangement gets you all the answers, or input output. So because of the some easier questions being there, you have only 40 minutes for 36 questions. So again, the number of questions remains the same, but average time to solve per question kind of varies across the section, but that is okay because there will be easier questions in each of these sections which don't take that much time to solve. Okay, so now that you understand the particular this, also remember, as I said, somebody who gets stressed about tests, this would be a good exam for you, because you get the option that okay, if I don't do well in this, I can retake the exam. Secondly, if you are somebody who wants to take the exam at home, this would be a good option for you. And thirdly, if you are somebody who struggles with like test where there is very limited time or gets stressed out about that, this would be a good exam for you, because you get actually a decent amount of time to solve each of the questions. So if you are somebody who is very accurate but your attempt rate is generally on the lower side, this would be a good exam for you, because accuracy is what matters more over here. You get ample time for the questions that are there. So that is also something that you should keep in mind. Having said that, personally from experience, as somebody who has given online proctored exams at home versus at test center, I would actually highly recommend going to a test center, because you will find on average the test center scores are better, because you are far more mentally prepared and active and on to actually give those kind of exams, rather than the online proctored at home. You just basically go through these motions of like handing over your belongings, taking care, sitting, calming down, being in an environment which is very quiet. Because of all of those external factors also, your performance generally tends to be better in the actual test center than the online proctored mode. You might be different and you might actually feel more comfortable in online proctored mock at home. But if you are in general not somebody who has like some issues going outside or going to a test center, I would recommend the test center over the online proctored mode. So now this is about the exam format. Let's take a look at the eligibility. So remember, the test and the actual eligibility of which colleges accept this are two entire things. So the colleges that accept this are, firstly, NMAT is mostly for NMIMS. This is the Nasimunji Institute of Management Studies. This is the institute which basically used to take this exam, which used to conduct this exam, but it has now outsourced it to GMAC. So this is the first most important B school that actually takes the score from this exam, but there are others also, like there is KJ Somaya. There is one particular like program of ISB that also accepts the NMAT score, which is in business analytics. Then there are certain like colleges outside of India that also accept it, like the SDA Bocconi Asia campus accepts this. SPJ IMR, two of the programs of SPJ IMR also accepted. So there are certain other colleges that also accept the NMAT score as such. So but remember, these are two different steps. So you have to remember that the individual eligibility criteria for all of these exams, for all of these particular like the particular colleges will be different from the eligibility criteria for the NMAT exam as such. The NMAT exam has no eligibility criteria. There is no age limit. There is no age limit to take the NMAT. But whether or not in giving NMAT and getting selected by the college are two different eligibility criteria. You have to check the eligibility criteria of the college that you want to apply to. NIMS, for example, the only other major eligibility criteria is that you have to have 50% in graduation. You have to have at least a minimum 50% in a bachelor's degree graduation as such. So these are the eligibility criteria for NIMS. Each college will have its own eligibility criteria. I suggest that if you have a targeted college, check out its eligibility criteria. For the NMAT exam itself, there is no criteria as such. Now let's take a look at the syllabus. We'll start with language skills. Now language skills is pretty similar to all the other like verbal and reading comprehension sections, VARC section of CAT. It is very similar to the language section of or English section of ZAT. So it's something that you would actually have a lot of comfort with to start off with. So you have the first and foremost biggest component of NMAT language skills is reading comprehension. So for example, out of your 36 questions that are there in this section, around 12 come from reading comprehension. There will be like 4 set reading comprehensions, pretty similar to the CAT level, maybe slightly easier, but in general pretty similar to CAT as such. 4 set reading comprehensions, 3 4 set reading comprehensions generally come. Now of this you would already have some ability to solve. So if you are somebody who is preparing for CAT and is also thinking of taking NMAT, I'll tell you where you have to focus, but because this part you would already have some exposure to. If you do not have exposure to this, I would suggest doing reading comprehension, some basic reading up on how to do reading comprehension. The course will take care of it, so don't need to worry about that. But this is like 1/3 of the section. It is extremely important to do well in this particular section. The second one is like you will have 4 questions from parajumble. They call it para completion. So basically unscrambling a paragraph. So if you are somebody who has already done CAT or done ZAT, you will know exactly what you have to do in this. It can be 4 or 5 sentences parajumbles. So again, similar to CAT and ZAT in terms of parajumbles difficulty also. Now comes the part which is slightly different. So this part which is not there in CAT but is there in ZAT, which is grammar and sentence correction and vocabulary. This forms a good chunk of your attempt. This is about 20 questions from English grammar and vocabulary, and this is something which is completely different from CAT as such. So if you are just preparing for CAT and if you are looking that okay, I've already prepared for CAT, now I want to take NMAT, what additional work that do I have to do? You have to focus on this because this is completely different from what you are used to. So you will get around 6 questions on analogies. So you need to have a good vocabulary for that. You will get around 6 questions on spotting the error or error correction in sentence, which is essentially grammar and sentence correction. So you need to work on your sentence correction skills and grammar skills for this. And remaining 8 questions or so will be from over here, which is essentially fill in the blanks. You will be asked to fill in the blanks with the correct preposition. You will be asked to fill in the blanks in a closed test kind of this. From vocabulary, what is the correct usage of the word, what is the meaning of this idiom, what is the meaning of this phrase, what are the synonyms, antonyms. So vocab also plays a huge role in this. Vocabulary and grammar and sentence correction. If you are just preparing for CAT, you don't need to actually look at that. But for NMAT, it plays a big role. So you need to like brush up on your vocabulary, try to see some of the words on like roots of the words or meanings of the words, commonly confused words. That would help you a lot. Again, you also have to look at like say idioms and phrases, phrasal verbs, common prepositions that have to follow certain kinds of verbs. So preferred, so if you say I prefer to and not prefer by or prefer this, so you have to figure out which prepositions must follow certain verbs. So we'll have we will have videos for each of them, but you need to remember that those things, working on that is very important for the NMAT exam because you would not have a lot of exposure to those specific parts. Now let's take a look at the next this. So these are the 36 questions, 12 marks from reading comprehension. Generally, given the error rate that is there, your bulk of the marks, even if you feel that this is 12, this is 20, your bulk of the marks will come from this, because the 20, it is very difficult to get all 20 of them right, but you can get at least 11 of those 12 RC questions right. So your bulk of the marks will actually come still from RC, so it is very important to do well in RC, but also spend a lot of time working on your English grammar and your vocabulary. Para jumbles will be the same level as CAT and ZAT. Now let's take a look at the quantitative skills. Again, 36 questions. These are split up. You can say that this is like, this part is problem solving, this is data interpretation, and this is data sufficiency. So 4 questions come from data sufficiency, 12 questions come from data interpretation, and around 20 come from problem solving, which is like normal QA that you see in CAT. So what exactly is then in problem solving or in QA? So basically your normal CAT portion of arithmetic, algebra, progressions and series, logarithms, geometry and mensuration, probability and permutations and combination, number properties, number systems. These are the basic things that you have in your quant. This that comes in CAT, ZAT, in all exams. The only additional thing that you have to do for NMAT is statistics, like what is the mean of this set, what is the median of this set, what is the standard deviation of this set. You need to be able to answer the basic statistics of a given set. And the second part is trigonometry. You might have skipped this entirely for CAT because it doesn't really come in CAT that much, but you need to brush it up for NMAT. So this is like the 20 questions, which is pretty similar. The overlap between CAT, ZAT and this is pretty similar. So if you are prepared for CAT, this is not something that you have to do a whole lot of, but you have to brush up on your statistics and you have to brush up on your trigonometry. The second thing is DI. So you will be asked basic DI sets on line chart, bar chart, pie charts, tables, etc. So this is also something you would probably know if you have given CAT, but otherwise this will be a basic DI set, not very difficult. You will have to just convert the charts data into table format and spend some time calculating. The other part which you might not have a lot of experience is data sufficiency. Data sufficiency nowadays doesn't really come in CAT, but it comes regularly in NMAT. You can expect at least 4 questions over here of data sufficiency type. And remember, in data sufficiency, the approach has to be slightly different. We'll be covering them in our videos, but remember, some amount of practice is needed even to specifically know how to solve data sufficiency questions. The base concept of data sufficiency can be from arithmetic, it can be from algebra, it can be from geometry or whatever. But how to solve them, you have to have other tricks up your sleeve to solve the data sufficiency questions, especially to solve them within time. So this is the basic quantitative skills. This, remember, your CAT portion covers like about 60-70%, not even 60-70%, 80-90% of the NMAT preparation. There are a few extra things that you have to do: data sufficiency, statistics, and trigonometry. If you have ignored PNC and probability, you have to do that also properly. Okay, so once now that you know what exactly you have to focus on, this is also important. These 4 are important. You need to revise them before NMAT. Let's take a look at the last section, which is logical reasoning. This, I believe, departs the most from the corresponding section in CAT. So till now we had language skills matching up with VARC, quant matching up with quant, but this doesn't actually match up with LRDI of CAT at all. So if you are somebody who is whose reference is CAT, this is entirely different. This I would say is actually easier in many ways. It is not as difficult as CAT, LRDI, or even ZAT for that matter. This is actually on the easier side. So if you are somebody who struggles with reasoning, this might be your favorite section to actually crack NMAT. So over here, a big part of it is critical reasoning. From the analytical reasonings, you will be comfortable with grouping, that is selection with conditions, numerical grid, puzzles, arrangements. These are the things that you normally see in CAT or ZAT as such. In addition to that, there are some like ZAT puzzles or like things that you see in some banking exams, like input, output, blood relations, coding, decoding. That is there in ZAT also. That is there in many banking exams. These are essentially very easy logical reasoning puzzles. So if you are somebody who struggles with reasoning, this might be, you will find even the arrangements easier. This is actually very easy. That is, banking reasoning questions are generally on the easier side. And PNC based questions are also not difficult if you understand the base concepts of counting. Venn diagrams and number series. Number series, sometimes you get the number series, sometimes you don't. But essentially it is not a very complicated concept that will take a lot of time to think and understand. So very few kinds of number series can come. We'll be covering the different types that you have to prepare for, and it is something that you can do reasonably well in. Now this part is basically completely new to a lot of people, so here is where you should be focused on trying to crack this section, which is critical reasoning. If you haven't given GMAT, if you have not given that, there'll be a lot of you who will find critical reasoning very difficult because it will be the first time you're exposed to it. So you have to spend a lot of time understanding all the concepts of critical reasoning and practicing questions from it. We have a lot of practice questions also in our study room from critical reasoning, so please do go ahead and solve that. See, critical reasoning will basically be, you can think of it as verbal reasoning. You have to think out the verbal, this is something that you also see in reading comprehension. Which of the following facts would strengthen the author's argument? Which of the following fact would weaken the author's argument? Which of the following is an assumption the author has made in making this argument? Which of the following is a flaw in the argument? So all of that, okay, if the statement is this, what is the underlying assumption? If this is the statement, if this is the premise, what can be inferred? What is the inference accompanying this? If this is the statement, what can be concluded? Which of the conclusions necessarily follow from the given statements, which of the conclusions do not necessarily follow from the given statements. Now you have syllogisms, which is basically, you can think of them as Venn diagrams, drawing Venn diagrams and say these are A is necessary B, or A is necessarily not B, or all men are humans, all humans are animals, all animals are this. So once you try to think of them as, instead of like reasoning things, but instead of as Venn diagrams, it becomes easier to solve. Syllogisms comes over here, and it is one of the things with practice you can get 100% in. Cause and effect is slightly more difficult because again it is verbal reasoning. Strong arguments, weak arguments, course of action, all of that you see also in some form in your reading comprehension, or if you have actually given GMAT or any of the critical, exams with critical reasoning, these are fairly standard things that come in critical reasoning. Even sometimes in banking exams you see this, where you are given the statement and conclusion, statement and inferences, which of them necessarily follow. So these are not very difficult, they are not very, it is not super difficult to answer them. However, they are not trivial. If you are not used to them, you will struggle a lot with this. So I would suggest that in your a good bulk of your preparation time should be given to this, because this is one section where normal test takers who do not have experience in NMAT or in these kind of tests will definitely struggle. So I would say that I identified different parts that you should focus on. This is one of those parts you should definitely focus on doing a lot of questions on, because it will make a big difference to your score. So now that you've understood what the different parts are, what the syllabus is, how do we actually use the course? So if you've seen the course, we have put like day, we have told you the date, and we have given you a list of things to do. So basically what we believe is that we should not task the students with like figuring out how to attempt the syllabus or just giving you the videos and telling you to study by yourself. We'll tell you exactly what to do each day, so that from then to the actual exam date, we have everything covered. We'll make sure that you get ample concept coverage, ample practice, mocks, etc. Everything we take care of. We give you the day-wise schedule. So if you follow the day-wise schedule, your preparation will go on in a methodical way. So what I request all of you who are preparing using NMAT course is that please try to stick to the schedule. If you start falling back on your preparation, if you start falling back in the concept coverage or covering the daily tasks, try to cover them up on the weekends, because whatever your pending tasks are, try to keep up with the timetable. If you are consistent in your efforts, you will get a good result. If you let a lot of your tasks pile up, then it will become difficult for you to maintain your momentum of preparation also. So please make sure that every day, whatever schedule is sent to you, you complete it on that day itself. There might be exceptions. You have an exam someday or you have a test someday to prepare, and that particular schedule cannot be completed. Try to cover it up on the weekend. So basically every day we'll tell you, okay, for the day 2 or something like that, you will get a list of videos to see. Make sure you see the videos, you take the accompanying test, and you check the questions in that particular test. If you get a question wrong in the test also, you have to see why you got it wrong. So make sure that you understand each of the concepts that are being covered. So go ahead and just stick to the schedule. There will be complete conceptual coverage, complete practice, and on the weekends, we'll also be scheduling the mocks. So whatever mocks we put up, we'll be scheduling it sometime over the weekend, so that you can schedule those also within your preparation. So always remember, first try to finish the portion and try to take as many of the mocks as possible. stick to the schedule, and you will be remove yourself out of the equation and your own scheduling out of the equation. And if you stick to the schedule that we give, I'm pretty sure you will have ample practice, complete concept coverage, and you will be in good shape before NMAT exam. So this is all that I have to say for this particular course. So best of luck to all of you guys who are preparing for NMAT.